I kind of felt my last video warranted a part two because there's some, I think, things that are worth mentioning. In this country, these lockdown procedures that are in place made me think of, well, if you if you recall the film 28 Days Later, 28 Weeks Later, they were a duo of British zombie related dystopian films. Now, obviously, this is not zombies. We're not going to be. It's not the same situation. It's yeah. Um, but what's interesting if you look at the score for those films, they were very powerful films at the time. 18 years on, 28 Days Later was made in 2002, 28 Weeks Later in 2007. Even 18 years on, the effect is strong. It was a very well made film. There's a famous scene where Cillian Murphy kind of wakes up and he's in hospital garb and he just wanders through the empty streets of London completely baffled at what the hell has happened. And it's been this kind of, well, in the film they're called The Infected because the background to this is an animal rights group unleashed some primates from Cambridge Life Sciences. A lot of this, of course, was artistic license, but because we no longer have that sort of animal testing in the UK. But basically, that unleashed the rage virus, which then, if you're familiar with the film, which then spread across the country. In the sequel, the Americans are occupying London a month later, well, weeks later. And but basically, the score. What's interesting when I was playing the soundtrack just now, people were writing in the comments section, "Coronavirus 2020." This is the soundtrack of 2020, Britain now, and so on. Obviously, that's hyperbole. We're not. That isn't the situation. But we really can't understate this. I've just watched a Sky News report on the situation in Italy. Now, I give the Italians a lot of respect because I think they've handled this with, okay, you could argue they were naive at the beginning, as a lot of us were, but they haven't been panic buying. They've been adhering to the rules, and huge respect to those people who are kind of boosting morale. They're keeping within the restrictions, but for example, one guy was playing the piano on his balcony and sending out the sort of message to his neighbors, and there was similar sentiment actually in Wuhan in China when people were singing the national anthem from the windows, and similar things have been seen around the world. But there is different approaches in different countries. I think the concept of panic buying is quite a British thing. I'm not sure if it's really been happening in the same way in other parts of Europe. Um, Apparently, if the Prime Minister gets sick, Dominic Raab, as Chief Secretary of State, and well, he's Foreign Secretary, but he is also officially just get the precise title here, First Secretary of State. He's de facto Deputy Prime Minister. He would take over, presumably, as interim Prime Minister. In Germany, Angela Merkel is under quarantine, self-imposed quarantine, because her doctor apparently has got the coronavirus. In Spain, the situation is now looking like it might surpass Italy. The situation in Italy, the number of deaths are soar above any other country, even China. It's now double China. I believe 6,077 deaths. China's just over 3,000. But Spain has surpassed 2,000 today. So the situation in Spain is certainly looking bad. And the situation for medical personnel across the world, one can't help but have a huge amount of respect for these people. I mean, my mum was a nurse for 40 years, so I have a natural respect for that. But apparently, this Thursday, there's going to be a sort of thing where we're being encouraged to clap from our homes at 8 o'clock, sort of a clap for carers. It's a principle that's backed by the Duke of Cambridge, and it's sort of just to show our solidarity. There was one young nurse, and she broke down in tears because she'd finished a long shift, and because people had been panic buying, there was no food. She couldn't get any food, so that's why people shouldn't be selfish. They need to really get what they need. But I do think there are, if we reflect on this, what mistakes have been made, I think that's one of them. I think the big stores should have been stricter early on. As it stands, Tesco's has sort of said due to the situation we're restricting items to three per person. But early on, they should really have imposed that. Um, rather than letting people go out with, say, 20 bags of toilet rolls and so on. I don't think the toilet rolls are the main priority, but food certainly is. Um, but like I said, the situation in Spain is definitely looking bad, and in this country, the number of deaths is still far less in Italy or Spain, but the number of cases are going up every day. Um, like I said, I think Johnson's response was good. It was statesmanlike. It was measured. I still think the government needs to give clarity on, for example, how the police are going to impose this, and also on, I think there needs to be more clarity on the situation for vulnerable people because there can't just be a given that a 90-year-old has access to Facebook or Skype. There can't just be a given that someone with learning difficulties or severe anxiety problems could have, just handle that well, and we can't just assume that they will have a carer. This isn't always clear cut. I mentioned crime had fallen. There was a horrible crime or a horrible incident happened in Bolton in Greater Manchester earlier. A little 7-year-old girl was stabbed to death in front of her parents by a woman who's being detained under the Mental Health Act, 30 years old. Apparently, members of the public were praised for this is before Johnson's curfew um, for restraining her. Now, I'm not saying that's anything to do with the virus, but it just goes to show that I was maybe wrong to say that crimes aren't still happening, but now with the total lockdown, I don't even know if I should go into town to get food. I've got food at the moment, but I'm feeling a little bit wary. Like, well, if I go in, will I be fine? Will I? I mean, I'm a young, healthy man. I'm not vulnerable. Um, I've got food now, so I'm certainly not going to be selfish and take what more vulnerable people might need. But at some point, I will need to stock up again. I mean, food, it doesn't matter if you're healthy or vulnerable, everyone needs food. So at some point, I'll have to do that. Um, the print press, I was wondering about this. I mean, newspapers were published even at the height of the Blitz. So that's admirable, for Fleet Street, that they would have a mechanism in place. This would, I would consider, be seen as essential workers. People need news. Um, I'm sure there's a lot more to say about this, but I thought I'd just add those things. It's interesting seeing in Italy, people are now wearing masks. This is something that has long been associated with Asian culture because of the pollution in Asian cities, but we're now seeing it as the norm in Europe. Um, but Italians being very sociable sort of people, as are other Latin cultures, to see them sort of 2 feet apart from each other and really adhering to the rules. Iranians, situation there is pretty bad. It's, I believe, the fourth highest death toll at the moment. But they're, like I say, traveling between cities, and the response of the regime is disgusting, spreading conspiracy theories, claiming that America created the virus. And there's a lot of fake news going out. For example, that the sanctions that are on Iran are including medical supplies. That is factually not true. So it scares me that people could lap this stuff up and think it's just going to stir up political tensions because then people will think, oh, well, it's an American biological war against the people of Iran. But the sanctions have never included medical supplies. Even in the 90s, the sanctions against the Saddam Hussein regime didn't include medical supplies. How authoritarian regimes handle that is a different matter. Um, so I think it's too easy to make America the scapegoat. That's what China's been trying as well, trying to push conspiracy theory shamefully. That's oh well, it was U.S. Army unleashed this in Wuhan. Zero evidence for that. So be very careful what you read that is outlandish, that sounds like a conspiracy theory, because it likely is, and it likely has no basis in fact. Um, that's not to say governments can't be criticised. I think there's probably scope for criticism for every government, and not just China, every government. But I still say that the Chinese cover up, that will damn their reputation to history. It doesn't matter how they responded to it afterwards. History will record that the Chinese Communist Party covered this up in the initial few weeks. If they'd been transparent and open and handled this initially, Could it have prevented a global pandemic? We'll never really know for sure. Maybe not, but certainly one would consider that it may have alleviated that. Um, what else can I say? The situation in Russia doesn't seem to be too bad, but you know what's true and what isn't. This is why an open media is so very important. But wherever you are in the world, just use common sense, wash your hands, um, and self isolate if you've got the virus, for goodness sake. And just because the thing is, how people respond within their own country actually has implications for everyone on the planet. Because of the nature of this world, we're interconnected. Still flights going around the world, although a lot less than before. In fact, it's criticism that there were still flights coming into the UK when other European countries had cancelled their flights. So, whilst Johnson's getting a lot of praise now, in retrospection, some of that may go against him. However, if we do alleviate the sort of situation that Italy's had, then I think history will judge the Johnson administration kindly. Um, I suspect there'll be many more updates. I'm sure there's other things I could say even now. There's so many bits of I mean, this is the only story in the world right now, really. It's overtaken everything. The war in Syria, the war in Afghanistan, the American presidential race, everything. The Olympics has been suspended until next year in Tokyo. Everything. And like I said, I cannot think of any other global event that's had such a sweeping impact as this. The global recession didn't stop the Olympics. At that time, it would have been the Vancouver Winter Olympics, or the Beijing Olympics for that matter. September the 11th had major impact on aviation and security measures, but it didn't even have this sort of implication on day-to-day life in smaller cities. In big cities, yeah, but not in smaller cities. So this is unprecedented. It really is. And we shouldn't panic, we shouldn't be hysterical, but we need to see it for what it is. It's getting bright now, and I'm not going to go out today. It's really quite something. Like I say, I'm sure I'll have a lot more to add to this. Any mistakes I take full responsibility for, but don't believe conspiracy theories about governments deliberately engineering the virus. I believe the Chinese government, for example, I've been very critical of them and I stand by that. But I don't believe that they created the virus as a war on the world. I don't believe that. As despicable as I believe the Chinese Communist Party is, I don't think that they're that crazy. I don't think they're that reckless. I do think they have a lot to answer for with this. I don't believe that. So that's why I think that the Chinese government has no excuse for encouraging conspiracy theories that the United States has created this, or the Iranian regime for that matter, creating those conspiracy theories. Um, like I say, the sanctions do not include medical supplies. So that is just fake news being pushed by the Iranian regime. Um, right, I'm sure there'll be a lot more to say, but I'll leave it there for now.